Hello everyone, this is a webinar for applicants for the Preschool Development Expansion Grant for Year 4. Current subgrantees are in the middle of their Year 3 grant award, with most of those grants ending at the end of June. So these application materials are for the next round of subgrantees, which will begin around that time. At this time, Year 4 grants will be written until December 31st, 2018. So this webinar is for supervisory unions, supervisory districts, and Head Start programs who are interested in applying for PDEG funds for Year 4. This webinar, I'm going to walk through the entire workbook which is the application materials, and you'll see that there'll be 8 different steps that all applicants have to complete to submit a full application. So when you open the workbook, you'll see right away at the bottom that there's different sheets labeled with steps and information of what is going to need to be entered. The first one just says applicant information, and I filled in some information already just to show you what it's going to look like. But one thing you'll notice right away is that some of the cells have red triangles, and if you just hover your cursor over that cell, it will give you some additional directions that may be helpful when you're filling out the information. You also will notice there's white cells and orange cells. The orange cells are all locked, and they're going to automatically populate information or calculations that you enter in the white cells. So if you try to click on an orange cell and put in some information, you'll get this message. So the first thing you're going to do is going to select the name, your legal name, which would be who the subgrantee would be. And for this webinar, I picked St. Johnsbury School District for an example. And then you'll have to type in the superintendent or executive director if you are a Head Start. And you'll see when you put in your subgrantee name, it will change the address. So that will populate for you based on the information we have at the agency. You need to enter a primary contact information, phone number, email, if you've been a subgrantee in the past, the date you're submitting your application, and your DUNS number. And if you hover, you'll see what your DUNS number is. So that's the first page, nice and simple. When you're done, you're going to click on Step 2, Program Requirements. So this is a pretty quick step in the application. You'll notice that there's all these different program requirements that many of you are already familiar with, and what you'll need to do is read them. So all classes requesting PDEG funds are pre-qualified under Act 166. You have a drop down here where you can select yes or no, and you'll need to go through all of these to ensure that the classrooms you're requesting funds are meeting program criteria. And you'll see here at the top, if you select yes, that means you're meeting that criteria and will continue to do so, or you will meet that requirement by the first day of school for students. So you're going to scroll down and enter information to every single step. When you are done with that, you're going to head over to Step 3. And I should mention as well, and you'll see in the directions in almost all of these sheets, is that before filling out these application materials, it's absolutely critical to read the PDEG guidance and instructions document that's posted on our website. So I would sit down with that while you're filling out application materials to make sure you're doing everything correctly, especially when we get to the budget documents. But before we get to the budget documents, we need to do Step 3, which is Classrooms, Enrollment and Eligibility. So once again, you'll see orange cells and white cells. You are only able to enter and need to enter information into the white cells. So since I used St. Johnsbury as an example, you'll see drop-down information here. So you have to find your licensed site name and then click on it. So we did ABC LOL. And then after that, you need to put in an identifying classroom name. Because these licensed site numbers have multiple classrooms, and you may not be requesting PDEG funds for all of those classrooms, write a name that makes sense to you in your program and will be used throughout the rest of the application. You'll also see when you type in or when you select a program, it will automatically place the CDD license number in there. One thing to be aware of as well is this data comes from VFIS, so if that information isn't updated for your program, you're going to have to let me know, and so we can make sure the correct information is there. After you put the classroom name in, you're going to tell us, enter the number of estimated eligible PDEG students you're expecting in this classroom next school year, the total number of students, and then it will calculate for you the percentage of PDEG students in that classroom. So you can see if you change the number, it will update that over here. Also, it will give us the total, which is important for PDEG students expected to be served. And this is a really important section because this will, once we get to the budget documents, it will pull information from this column. So you're done with that one pretty quick. Step 4 is the scope of work. So this is going to require a little more typing. You will see in these cells the program criteria that many of you are familiar with. And in column B, you need to insert all the activities and tasks that you are going to do during the grant period to meet and maintain these requirements. So you'll see if you scroll down, you have all this space that you can fill information to share how you're going to meet and maintain these requirements. Some of them will be shorter than others, like staff ratio. We wouldn't expect too much information, but comprehensive services and alignment with VELs are really important information that we want to see in every application. When you are done with this one, you're going to head to step 5. This is other funding sources. So what you'll need to do is in column A, everyone is going to be a little different, but enter any additional funding sources that are supporting these PDEG supported classrooms that you are requesting funds for. So Head Starts obviously will be typing in Head Start funds and whatever amount that may be, but everyone's other funding sources are going to look a little bit different. And other funding sources may not necessarily be for expenses that are for PDEG criteria, but the point of this is to show that other funding streams are supporting these classrooms. And then once you type in your other funding streams, it will calculate it for you, and you'll see this number on our budget table, which is step 8 in a little bit. After step 5, we're going to move to step 6, which is the budget narrative. This will be probably the most time-consuming part of the application process, and I really recommend that your members of your business team and your program team sit down to do this, especially this section. For this section, you'll also need that guidance and instructions document, especially for the personnel categories. And I'd also recommend, before you start typing everything into this step, go through each table one by one so you know what's coming up and what expense that you have that you think you're going to apply for, where it might go. Because even though there's the same budget categories as previous years, they're really broken down into even more specific context and situations, and you'll see that in the first couple especially. So budget narrative, step 6. The first one is personnel, which previous subgrantees are used to, but you'll notice that it says instructional staff only, and it's really important in this budget narrative step that you read the name of the table and the specifications after it. So this is instructional staff only. So if you read, when you read the guidance and instruction document, you know who is included in that, which would be a lead teacher, an assistant teacher, or a paraprofessional. And these are the positions that we have to prorate for the first 10 hours. So you'll see classroom name and another drop down, and the classrooms will pop up that you typed in over on step 3 down here. So St. Johnsbury Class 1, I'm going to type in the information that is stated down here under description of personnel. You'll see something really important that do not include contracted personnel. There's a whole separate section on this step for contracted expenses. So hold off on anyone for private provider teachers, specialist that you are entering into a contract with. Just hold off on those until we get to that section. Next step would be total salary, and this would be the total salary until December 31st, since that's when the grants are ending. You'll then enter the student time in classroom. So this would be a minimum of 5 hours a day as the grant requirements. And then previously funded hours would be at a minimum 10 hours for universal pre-K. Once that's entered, that will give you, it will automatically calculate PDEG hours requested. And then the amount requested will also be calculated, and this comes from whatever you put for St. Johnsbury Class 1 as percentage of eligible students. You'll find that back here. Well, it's 100% funded classroom for Class 1. And so you'll see this is the amount that can be requested. If I were to change this to St. Johnsbury Class 2, which is not 100% PDEG eligible, you'll see the amount requested change based on that percent. We'll go down the list and click all the personnel that are not contracted and fill out this information, and it will total it for you. I would also say before starting each table, definitely read these directions because it will tell you exactly what you need to enter. So that's the first personnel table. If you keep scrolling down, you'll see personnel 1B. And this is for those other 3 categories that are in the guidance document. So an example I did, since there's many different situations for it, additional and comprehensive support. So I typed in a family engagement coordinator, which many people have requested in the past. And I will follow the directions down here of what needs to go in that box. The total salary until December 31st. The total hours worked per week, so I'm going to say this is a 40-hour per week position, and of those 40 hours via their contract, they are committed to PDEG as well. So that makes it quite obvious that percentage of PDEG students served during the hours dedicated to PDEG are 100%. So you'll see that's a fully funded position. A different situation would be a bus driver. So if you're requesting personnel to provide transportation services, you'll put in the full salary until December 31st, the total hours that person works a week, and of those hours, of those 20 hours, 5 of those hours, you could say PDEG students are present. Therefore, of those 5 hours that PDEG students are present, only 50% of them may be PDEG eligible. So that would be the calculation where there's 10 students on a bus and only 5 are PDEG eligible. That will account for that. So, and it will automatically calculate for you right here. Another example would be a program administration position, full salary until December 31st. They work 40 hours a week and only 20 hours are contracted towards PDEG or are for PDEG students or tasks. But of those 20 hours that are dedicated to PDEG, 100% of the students are being served, and it will calculate for you. So we're going to scroll down. So this table, there's many different positions that may be entered in here. Again, do not put contracted positions in this table. That will happen down at step 6. So I'm going to keep scrolling. You'll see fringe benefits starts at number 2, and again, instructional staff only. And the only difference between this table and table 1B, which was personnel instructional staff, is this box where it says full benefits amount. The table 1B, it would say total salary. So you would enter full benefits amount here until December 31st and do the same calculations if you're requesting fringe for the positions stated above. And again, same for fringe table 2B. This is for instructional support staff, program administration, and additional or comprehensive support. And the only difference is this one right here. We're going to keep scrolling. And we are at travel. So travel is the 3rd table. Let me zoom out a little bit. So travel is the 3rd table. And you'll see personnel category again, which is a drop-down menu. You'll also see students or families in this option as well. You'll put in the description of the travel activity that is stated down here, what needs to be in there. You'll enter the full amount of those expenses, yes or no if it's professional development. If there's another source of funding that is supporting this expense, it will calculate that out for amount requested. Moving down to equipment. So equipment and supplies both have two tables. One is for single classroom, one is for multiple classroom. For single classroom, you're going to choose from your drop down that you created. And so we'll use St. Johnsbury Class 2. The description of the equipment, the full cost of the item, any contributing funding from a different source. And because it's a single classroom and it's attached to the percent eligible that you put in step 3, it will automatically calculate for you how much you can request. If there's multiple classrooms, like in the past when with playground equipment or equipment that's used for the entire school, you have to enter this information manually compared to the table above. So I would enter multiple classrooms, so maybe class 1 and 2, just for an example. And we want this boulder climber, it's $12,000. Of these 2 classrooms, only 5, well, let's add the whole school. So if it's the whole school that is accessing these funds, and you'd have to calculate it based on that. So say only 5% of PDEG students are accessing that equipment, this amount will be calculated based on full cost times percentage of students using it. We're going to keep scrolling. So supplies, single classroom, you'll see this exact same setup as equipment. So if it's connected to one classroom, you'll choose the classroom and the amount requested will be based on the percentage of eligible students. For multiple classrooms, that's where you'll need to type in all the classrooms using the supply, and then you'll also have to enter the percentage of PDEG eligible students using that supply, and it will calculate for you what you can request. Scrolling down to, when I said do not type any contractual expenses in the tables above, that's because we have this section here. There are 5 tables under contractual, and they are exactly the same as the personnel, instructional staff only, personnel, instructional and support staff, program administration. So these tables are the exact ones as personnel table 1A and 1B. So it's going to be the same process. And then again, the same process for fringe as you did for non-contractual personnel under fringe. It will be the same process, where the only difference for fringe is it says total benefits amount instead of total salary. You're going to scroll down. Contractual supplies and equipment, travel and other. So any other item that's contracted that's not personnel or fringe can go in this category or in this table. And then for training stipends, you will choose the personnel category, the description of the training activity, which would include the name of the training, the date. Obviously, if it's a training after December 31st, that can't be approved right now since the grant is ending December 31st. You'll write the participant name, the full cost, if someone else or another funding source is contributing to this expense, and then the amount requested will be automatically calculated. And the last one is the other table. And before entering anything into this table, I would ask yourself, is this a contractual item? Is this a supply? Is this a travel expense? And then make sure it's going in the correct budget category. If you answer no to all those questions, then I would put it in this category. But even more so, if you're completely unsure, just email me and I can tell you where to put that expense in the application. So you'll see after you scroll through all those tables and fill them out, Your total direct costs will be automatically calculated. The same number will show up here. If you have an agency approved indirect cost rate and you're looking to apply for those funds, you would enter that amount here. Most of them are between 1 and 2%. Press enter. We'll do it as a decimal. So 1.61%, it will calculate the amount that you can apply for indirect, and then total grant funds requested will add your direct and indirect together. After you've done all that, you're going to click on step 7, budget table, and you'll see everything that you just did was automatically transferred to this table. So total direct costs, if you look back, 113.57, you'll see that same number there. And total grant funds requested, 115,416. The part that applicants will need to fill out on this step would be these white sections for grant year 1, 2, and 3 for your actual expenses in each budget category. And that's it for step 7. For step 8 is the last step of the application, and that is the sustainability plan. And you'll see there's 2 questions here that we are asking you to respond to in just a narrative format. You can type in these boxes and share what your plan is for maintaining these full day slots for these families after the grant ends. So if you click back through all of these sheets, every single one needs to be filled out. We will not accept Google Docs or additional appendices. This is the format that the applications need to be submitted in to make sure everyone's doing the math the same and we're reviewing the same application for everyone that applies. If you have any questions, please email me. I'm happy to talk on the phone or walk through, especially the budget narrative with you, which will take some time. Again, please read the guidance and instructions document. That will help you. It's really critical, actually, to give the budget narrative. And these are due March 1st, so please submit them via email by me to them. Keep them in this Excel format. Make sure you save a copy for yourself in case there is revisions needed. But then other than that, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.